Row 9, Seat F. A girl sat hunched beneath a soft gray hoodie, her posture quiet, her presence almost invisible. The long-haul flight hummed steadily around her, but she remained still, earbuds tucked under her hair, a simple backpack pressed beneath her feet. People passed her without a second glance. Business travelers focused on schedules, families managing restless kids, tourists excited for New York. No one looked twice at the girl with the worn hoodie and unreadable expression. She blended into the background like a shadow. But subtle things were happening around her. The kind of things most passengers never notice but trained eyes always catch. When flight attendant Mara stepped into the cockpit with the pilot's drinks, she sensed tension immediately. Captain Hale's shoulders were locked, his jaw tight, his gaze fixed too intensely on the instrument panel. When she asked if everything was all right, he didn't turn, didn't smile, didn't soften. He simply said, "All good," in a tone that fooled no one. What unsettled her more was the look from the co-pilot, Ethan. A soft, almost invisible shake of his head. A warning, a plea, a sign that something was wrong, wrong enough that speaking aloud could make it worse. Mara walked out with an uneasy chill spreading across her chest. Back in row 9, the girl slowly lifted her head, just enough to observe without drawing attention. Her fingers tapped lightly, too lightly to be nerves, too controlled to be random. She wasn't listening to music at all. Her earbuds were silent. She was listening for something else. Frequencies, shifts, patterns. She was scanning the cabin the way a musician listens for a broken note, or an engineer hears the faintest change in machinery rhythm. Her real name was Lena Hart, but that name meant little now. To a handful of people in places the public never sees, she once carried another identity, Spectre. For years, she worked in a world of invisible wars and digital shadows, quietly dismantling threats that never made the news. 2 years ago, she vanished from every file, every network, every traceable system. She had walked away from the life that nearly consumed her, leaving only sealed reports and whispered rumors behind. Yet instincts are stubborn things. They never retire. And right now, those instincts pressed against her like a storm warning. The air felt wrong. The energy in the cabin shifted with every minute, subtle enough that most would miss it, sharp enough that her mind locked onto it instantly. Something was moving beneath the surface, quiet, precise, dangerous. A sudden flicker crossed the cabin lights, barely a blink. Passengers didn't notice, but Lena did. She lowered her head again, the faintest exhale leaving her lips. A system spike. A digital hiccup inside the aircraft electronics. Too irregular to be random, too deliberate to be dismissed. She had promised herself she would never get involved again, never step back into that hidden world, never use the skills that once defined her. But the feeling crawling through her spine now wasn't fear, it was recognition. Whatever was happening up front was reaching into the aircraft's bones. And whatever it wasn't ordinary. She glanced toward the cockpit door. Ethan stood inside, speaking quickly, his hands moving across panels as Captain Hale fought against something she couldn't yet see. Something unseen. Something coded. Lena's heart tightened. She knew that rhythm. She knew that silence. Something, or someone, was tampering with the aircraft systems. And the only thing more dangerous than a hijacker at 36,000 feet was one who didn't need to step onto the plane at all. In row 9, Lena closed her eyes for a brief moment, steadying her breath. She didn't want this. She didn't seek this. But part of her, the part she tried so hard to bury, was already waking up. The ghost inside her was stirring. Ethan stepped out of the cockpit with a pace that didn't match the calm, polished routine of an experienced co-pilot. His steps were controlled, but his eyes were scanning, row by row, face by face, as if searching for someone specific. The tension pulsing through him was subtle, invisible to most passengers, but loud enough for Lena Hart to sense from 3 rows away. Her instincts sharpened instantly, the way they used to during missions she tried so hard to forget. She lowered her head, pretending to adjust her earbuds, though they remained silent. Her pulse stayed steady, but her mind was racing. The tiny tremors in the floor panels, the unusual delay in the cabin pressure recalibration, the faint desync in the overhead system lights. These were not coincidences. Something had infiltrated the aircraft systems. Not physically, digitally. And now the co-pilot was walking toward her. He paused beside her row, pretending to check the luggage bins overhead. Passengers barely noticed. But Lena did. She felt the shift of his shadow before he even leaned down. He spoke without moving his lips much, his voice barely above a breath. "Stay calm." Lena didn't respond. Her posture didn't change. He tried again, whispering quieter this time. "Spectre, we need you." Her eyes snapped open behind her glasses, a chill moving through her chest. That name didn't belong on commercial flights. That name didn't belong anywhere anymore. It was sealed in classified archives, buried under digital firewalls, known only to operators who live behind black screens and encrypted walls. She whispered back, low and sharp, "You're not supposed to know that name." "I don't," Ethan replied. His hands stayed steady on the luggage bin, but his voice trembled at the edges. "But the captain does. He recognized you the moment you boarded." Lena's heart tightened. Captain Hale had flown military routes before joining commercial aviation. He had seen things most civilians never imagined. But she never expected him to recognize her, not after years off-grid, not after vanishing intentionally. Ethan leaned closer, voice thin as a thread. He said if we ever faced a situation like this, there was only one person who could stop it. Lena's breath hitched. What situation? Ethan looked straight into her eyes. In that brief moment, she saw fear. Not panic, not confusion, but controlled fear. The kind only professionals feel when they understand the stakes completely. "The aircraft's systems have been breached," he whispered. "Not a glitch. Not turbulence. Someone is controlling parts of the plane from outside." Lena felt the world narrow around her. Passengers chatted casually 2 seats away, unaware that their lives were hanging in the balance. A toddler giggled with a plush toy. A businessman typed on his laptop. A couple argued softly over a spilled drink. She heard it all, saw it all, but her mind locked onto Ethan's words. A breach. A silent hijacking. A digital chokehold on the plane's systems. This wasn't random. This wasn't amateur. This was orchestrated. Ethan continued. The autopilot is resisting manual commands. Flight path data is being overwritten. Something is rewriting controls faster than we can respond. Lena clenched her jaw. She knew that pattern. She had wrestled with threats like this before, ones that hid behind encrypted commands and moved through networks like ghosts. She had sworn never to face them again. But fate didn't care about promises. She exhaled slowly. "Why come to me?" "Because the captain said only Spectre could read this kind of attack." Ethan forced a thin smile, an apology. "And because we're running out of time." Lena looked around the cabin. Normal people living normal moments, blissfully unaware of the digital trap tightening around them. She remembered why she walked away from her old life. Too much pressure, too many secrets, too many close calls and worlds no one ever thanked her for saving. But she also remembered why she once stepped into that life to begin with. To protect people who never knew her name. Her decision formed in a single breath. Lena removed her hood slowly. "Take me to where the interference began." Ethan nodded once, relief mixed with urgency, and guided her toward the rear galley. Passengers didn't notice. To them, she still looked like a quiet girl being escorted for a simple question or routine issue. But Mara, waiting near the galley doors, saw the shift immediately. "Who is she?" she asked, confused and afraid. Lena didn't answer, because she wasn't Lena right now. She was Spectre again, and Spectre was needed. The rear galley was quiet, too quiet for a plane carrying more than 200 passengers. The soft hum of the engines vibrated beneath the floor, but behind that steady noise Lena sensed something deeper, an irregular pulse in the aircraft's digital backbone. Mara stood there with wide, uncertain eyes, clearly aware that whatever was happening was far beyond routine turbulence or minor technical trouble. Ethan guided Lena to the narrow service area, lowering his voice to a hush. "This is where we first noticed something strange." The cabin system logs started glitching. Pressure recalibration took longer than usual. Then the cockpit screens began receiving fragmented ghost signals. Lena nodded slowly, her expression tight with focus. She pulled her backpack around and unzipped it, revealing 2 small, worn devices. Neither had logos, serial numbers, or anything that marked them as commercially made. They were tools from a world she used to call home, one she had promised herself she would never return to. Mara watched with confusion. "What are those?" "You're not crew. You're not supposed to." "She's here to help us," Ethan interrupted gently. Captain Hale said she's the only one who can understand what's happening. Mara stared at Lena, torn between fear and hope. But who is she? Lena didn't answer. Instead, she crouched beside a narrow maintenance panel near the rear lavatory. Her fingers moved with uncanny familiarity, slipping a small metal pick along the seam until the panel loosened with a soft click. As it opened, a cluster of fiber optic cables came into view, glowing faintly like a row of tiny stars. These lines shouldn't be active right now, Lena muttered. She traced one cable lightly, feeling the vibration of data passing through it. Whatever breached the system entered through the passenger network, probably through the Wi-Fi hub. Mara blinked. Someone hacked the plane through the Wi-Fi? Not someone with ordinary tools, Lena replied. This attack is too coordinated. Too clean. She powered on the matte black tablet. Green code flickered instantly across the screen, columns cascading faster than most people could blink. Lena's fingers danced across the interface, directing the device to scan for digital anomalies. Patterns emerged, disjointed and looping, like something alive trying to stay hidden. Her eyes narrowed. This isn't just a virus. It's a layered infiltration protocol. Every time the pilots try to override, the system rewrites itself. That's why they're failing. Ethan leaned closer, fighting a tremor in his voice. How do you stop something like that? You don't stop it all at once, Lena replied. You trace its spine. You find the root command. And you break its rhythm. She connected her second device, a compact module shielded in a metallic casing. The moment it linked to the aircraft's internal port, the cabin lights flickered again. Lena's jaw tightened. It's pushing back harder than I expected. Passengers turned in their seats, whispering. A few pressed call buttons. A baby cried softly. The flight attendants walked the aisle with practiced smiles, trying to calm people even though their own hearts were racing. They had no idea how close they were to losing control. Lena hit a command sequence and watched as the device revealed deeper layers of the intrusion. The numbers spiraled, forming patterns that triggered memories she'd buried years ago. She recognized the structure. This was the work of someone skilled, someone trained, someone who understood how to breach systems that were supposed to be impenetrable. It's learning from every attempt to stop it, Lena murmured. It's adaptive. That means whoever built it expected resistance. Mara swallowed hard. So what does that mean for us? It means, Lena said, her eyes cold with certainty, that this wasn't a random attack. We were targeted. Ethan's breath caught. Targeted? Us. This flight. No, Lena corrected quietly. Me. Silence fell between them. For the first time, Ethan truly saw the weight she carried. The years of ghosts she tried to outrun. The history she never wanted to face again. Lena inhaled deeply, steadying her hands. I can redirect the attack, but I'll need direct access to the avionics bay. That's the only way to fight it without crashing the system completely. That compartment is sealed mid-flight, Ethan said. Then you'll have to unseal it, Lena replied calmly. Ethan hesitated only a moment before nodding. They didn't have the luxury of doubt. Mara stepped aside, still unsure, but trusting the determination she saw in Lena's eyes. As Lena stood, tucking her devices under her arm, she felt the weight of the plane around her, hundreds of lives unaware of how close danger was. She didn't want this responsibility. She didn't seek it. But she wasn't Lena Hart anymore. Not right now. She was Spectre again. And Spectre knew exactly what to do. The deeper Lena traced the intrusion, the more the aircraft itself seemed to pulse with unease. She followed Ethan toward the restricted service hatch near the center of the cabin, every step measured, every sound amplified by rising tension around them. Passengers were beginning to sense that something was wrong, though they couldn't explain why. Whispers rose like scattered sparks. A nervous laugh here. A worried glance there. Small signs at first, but Lena felt the shift like a wave pressing at her back. Ethan tapped in a code at the hidden panel. The lock hissed open, and for a moment he hesitated. Once you're in there, we lose visual contact, he said quietly. Call if anything changes. Lena nodded. Keep the passengers calm. The more fear in the cabin, the harder this will get. Inside the narrow compartment, warm lights buzzed overhead as she lowered herself into the avionics bay. It was cramped, more like a metal spine running beneath the plane's skin. Rows of modules blinked in steady patterns, except for one panel where the lights pulsed in erratic bursts, as if the system itself were struggling to breathe. This is where it's rooting itself, Lena whispered. She connected her tablet and watched cascading code unfold like a digital storm. The attack was no longer hiding. It was expanding, rewriting blocks of data in seconds. Every corrective sweep she performed was instantly countered by a stronger, faster countermeasure. Her jaw tightened. Adaptive recursive worm confirmed. Someone knew exactly how the aircraft responds under stress. Above her, the first real signs of panic rippled through the cabin. A child cried sharply. A man pressed his call button 3 times in frustration. Mara's voice echoed faintly as she reassured passengers with forced calm. Just a routine diagnostic. Everything is fine. Please remain seated. But the tremor in her voice betrayed the truth. Ethan radioed down to Lena. We're losing secondary navigation. Autopilot is trying to reroute again. I see it. Lena's fingers flew across the interface, countering commands before they fully executed. It's rewriting its own pathways faster than I can isolate them. How do we stop that? Ethan asked. We don't try to outrun it, Lena said. We make it think it's already won. She reached into her backpack and pulled out her second device, a compact, military-shielded module designed for a very specific purpose. It wasn't meant for commercial aircraft. It wasn't meant for anything outside covert operations. But right now, it was the only option that didn't end in catastrophe. She connected it to the aircraft's central port. Instantly, the entire plane shuddered. Overhead, lights flickered violently. Screens blinked to black and then back to blue. The cabin filled with startled gasps. Someone shouted for help. Someone else demanded answers. Mara and the attendants hurried aisle to aisle, trying to hold the cabin together as fear spread like smoke. Ethan's voice crackled again. Lena, what did you do? I created a ghost system, she answered. A complete dummy version of the aircraft. The worm thinks it's in control of the plane now, but it's controlling an illusion. Will it buy us time? For a moment, she said. But it's smart. And it's learning. I need to quietly reroute the real controls back to the cockpit before it realizes the trick. For a moment, the worm's aggressive patterns softened. It believed its takeover was complete. But just as Lena began shifting control back to manual systems, the code surged violently, as if the AI sensed the deception. Alarms buzzed in the avionics bay. Lena tightened her grip on the cables. It's accelerating. Whoever built this underestimated how fast I can adapt, but it's still pushing harder than expected. The overhead lights dimmed again, this time longer. A murmur of fear spread across the plane. 2 passengers stood up despite instructions to stay seated. A mother hugged her son tightly. A man whispered a prayer under his breath. Lena wiped a thin sheen of sweat from her forehead. Each second counted more than the last. Come on. Come on, she muttered as she rewired command access line by line. Lena, Ethan's voice trembled. We're getting altitude drift. I know, she said. I'm almost done. But then the cabin lights flickered once more, and this time they didn't come back. Darkness swallowed the plane. Passengers screamed. Lena closed her eyes. That's not a failure, she whispered. That's me taking away the worm's eyesight. She pulled her comm close. Captain, you'll have manual control in 30 seconds. It's now or never. Because the ghost she was fighting wasn't just clever. It was fast, and they were running out of time. The darkness swallowed the cabin so suddenly that for a heartbeat the entire aircraft felt weightless, suspended in a silent pocket of fear. Gasps turned into cries, and cries into rising panic as passengers clutched armrests, children sobbed, and phones flickered desperately in trembling hands. The absence of light felt alive, thick, suffocating, as if the plane itself was holding its breath. But Lena didn't panic. This darkness wasn't the plane dying. It was the worm losing its sight. From deep inside the avionics bay, her voice sliced through the chaos, steady and controlled. Captain, you have a 30-second opening before the system recalibrates. Take manual control now. Do not hesitate. Captain Hale didn't question her. He couldn't afford to. In the dim emergency glow of the cockpit, he gripped the control column with both hands, feeling the weight of 200 lives pressing against his palms. The aircraft bucked sharply like a wild animal regaining consciousness. Ethan steadied himself beside him, voice tight as he called out altitude and tilt readings manually. Come on. Come on, Captain Hale murmured, forcing the plane to obey. The controls felt heavy, sluggish, like something was still dragging them off course. But they responded, inch by inch, to human strength. Back below, Lena watched strings of hostile code lash at the dummy system, trying desperately to break through the illusion she had created. "It's angry," she whispered. "Good. Stay focused on the shadow. Ignore the real plane." Her fingers moved in a chaotic ballet, rerouting circuitry with precision that bordered on impossible. The worm struck again, faster this time, trying to override the ghost system and reclaim the cockpit. But for now, just for now, it remained blind. Above her, passengers pulled each other close in the darkness. Mara walked the aisles with only her voice guiding her, speaking calm words she didn't fully believe. "Please stay seated. We're experiencing a minor power reset. You are safe. Everything is stabilizing." Though the fear in her own voice trembled, she still pushed forward, because she knew the passengers needed hope more than explanations. The plane jolted again. Harder. A deep metallic groan echoed through the cabin. Someone screamed. A man demanded answers in a frantic voice. A mother covered her daughter's ears as the girl sobbed into her chest. The air felt thick with terror. "Lena." Ethan's voice crackled over the calm. "We're drifting off trajectory. Altitude dropping. Manual input is fighting against something." "That's the worm trying to regain leverage," Lena replied. "I'm locking out the last of its access paths." "We're running out of sky," he shouted. "I know." Lena snapped, her voice razor-sharp but steady. She plugged her secondary device deeper into the port, forcing the system to prioritize her commands over every automated loop. "Hold it together for 10 more seconds." She didn't know if 10 seconds would be enough, but she had to make it enough. The aircraft trembled violently, one final tug from the worm. Then, suddenly, resistance vanished. It was like a rope snapped loose. Captain Hale felt it immediately. The controls eased under his hands, becoming responsive, real, human again. He inhaled sharply, and Ethan shouted, "We've got it." Manual control confirmed. For the first time in nearly 20 minutes, the cockpit felt alive again. Still terrifying, still volatile, but alive. The lights flickered faintly in the cabin above Lena. Then once. Twice. On the third flicker, they surged back to life, flooding the aircraft with pale, shaky illumination. Passengers blinked in shock, some crying openly, some whispering prayers of relief. Lena didn't celebrate. She didn't breathe yet. Instead, she kept her eyes locked on her screen as the hostile code slowed, weakened, then finally collapsed in on itself. Unable to find the real systems. Unable to fight the trap she had set. "We're stable," she whispered. "The worm is isolated." Ethan responded with a breath he'd been holding for far too long. "And the plane?" "Yours again." She disconnected her devices, but her hands shook for the first time since the ordeal began. Not from fear, but from the weight of what could have happened. Above her, the aircraft straightened, leveled, and glided back into its proper heading. The engines rumbled with renewed certainty. The plane felt almost normal again. Mara leaned against a seat, pressing a hand to her heart as relief washed through her. The passengers looked around in dazed silence, unsure whether to speak, to cry, or to simply breathe. And finally, Lena climbed out of the avionics bay, exhausted but steady. She had given them their 30-second miracle. Now they just had to land. When the wheels touched the runway, the landing was so smooth it felt unreal, like the plane was exhaling after holding its breath far too long. There was no applause, no celebratory cheers, not even the usual sighs of relief. The cabin stayed eerily silent, as if every passenger sensed they had walked through something life-altering without ever seeing the storm that passed over their heads. Captain Hale guided the aircraft along the taxiway with steady hands, but his eyes glistened with the weight of what he now understood. They had been seconds, maybe less, from catastrophe. Ethan sat beside him, pale with exhaustion, the overhead lights reflecting off a thin sheen of sweat across his brow. Neither spoke. Words felt too small for what had happened. Down in the cabin, Mara stood in the aisle with trembling fingers wrapped around the top of a seat. She wasn't sure if she wanted to cry, sit down, or hug every passenger who had trusted her voice during moments when she herself wasn't sure she believed her own reassurances. But they were safe. They were alive. And that was enough. Lena quietly emerged from the service corridor, brushing dust off her hoodie as if she had simply woken from a nap. Her expression remained calm, but her body carried the deep fatigue of someone who had wrestled with a monster made of numbers and shadows. She didn't look heroic. She didn't look triumphant. She looked tired. Deeply, profoundly tired. She slipped back to row 9, retrieved her backpack, and pulled her hood up. She wanted to be invisible again. Just a girl traveling alone. Just a quiet passenger no one ever noticed. Spectre might have saved the plane, but Lena wanted to leave no trace of that identity behind. As the plane slowed near the gate, the captain finally reached for the intercom. His voice came through the speakers steady but layered with something raw, respect, gratitude, and awe all tangled together. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "we've arrived in New York. Thank you for your patience during the unexpected technical difficulties." He paused. "There is also someone on board we need to thank. A passenger who ensured we made it to this runway safely." The silence thickened. Heads lifted. Every passenger, from the first row to the last, looked around with confusion. In row 9, the captain continued, "Is the person responsible for protecting all of us today. We owe her more than we can express." Gasps fluttered through the cabin. Dozens of eyes turned immediately toward the middle rows, searching, scanning, desperate to find the quiet hero who had just been revealed to them. But Lena was already 3 steps ahead. With her hood up and her backpack slung over one shoulder, she slipped into the aisle before anyone could pinpoint her. Her movements were fluid, humble, almost shy. She didn't look like someone who saved an aircraft mid-flight. She looked like a traveler trying not to miss a connection. A small girl seated near the front tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mama, is that her?" she whispered, eyes wide with wonder as Lena passed. Her mother pulled her close, whispering something soft and grateful as she watched Lena disappear down the aisle. Lena slowed, just for a moment, and glanced at the little girl. Their eyes met, only for a heartbeat, but something like understanding passed between them. The child smiled, pure and innocent, and Lena felt a warmth settle in her chest. But she didn't stop. She didn't speak. Heroes in stories give speeches. Heroes in real life keep walking. Ethan caught a glimpse of her from the cockpit window as she exited the plane. His breath caught with the urge to call out to her, to thank her properly, to ask how she did it, to understand who she really was. But he didn't say a word. The look on her face told him everything. She wanted no recognition, no spotlight, no lingering conversation. She wanted to disappear again. And so she did. The jet bridge was cool and quiet as she stepped onto solid ground. The night air slipped through the cracks of the terminal doors, carrying the scent of rain and city lights. People rushed past her, families, business travelers, college students, all unaware that she had just saved their lives, unaware that she had wrestled with a digital predator thousands of feet in the air. Lena walked out into the terminal crowd like a whisper fading into background noise. The world didn't turn to face her. Cameras didn't flash. No journalists chased after her with microphones. She blended into the endless flow of travelers, just another soul moving through the airport. Spectre had done her job. Lena simply walked away. Somewhere far from the terminal, in a secure archive protected by layers of encryption and clearance levels, a new line quietly appeared in a classified file. Spectre intervened at altitude. Civilian lives preserved. Status unknown. And just like that, the ghost vanished again.